if you want to fix a broken machine, you open it up, you take out the broken part, and you put it back together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's logical. But what if I told you that in one of the most common reproductive surgeries in the world, successfully cutting out the disease is exactly what might ruin your chances of having a baby?
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are cutting through the medical overwhelm for those of you trying to navigate the incredibly murky waters of endometriosis and fertility.
It is a diagnostic landscape that really challenges our basic assumptions about how the human body heals. We are so used to the idea of a clean, mechanical fix.
Which makes sense. Like if you break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged line, the doctor sets the bone, and you're good to go.
Exactly.
But today, we are looking at a stack of clinical research that explores a really painful paradox, which is why endometriosis surgery so often fails to deliver the promised result of pregnancy, and what science-backed avenues actually exist beyond the scalpel.
Yeah, it's a critical shift in perspective.
Okay, let's unpack this, because even if you are listening to this and you don't have endometriosis, this is essentially a masterclass in medical critical thinking.
Right.
It is a brilliant look at how modern medicine can sometimes get so fixated on the wrong villain, like structural, visible issues, that it completely misses the microscopic environment that's actually driving the problem.
The traditional narrative around endometriosis surgery, specifically laparoscopy, has always been very straightforward.
Okay.
The surgeon goes in, they find the visible lesions or cysts, they cut them out, and theoretically, the patient is restored to a healthy, fertile baseline.
Right, a clean slate.
But the clinical data we are looking at highlights a much harsher reality. Patients go through this grueling physical ordeal, they wake up with a clean pelvis, and they still can't get pregnant. A mechanically clear pathway does not equal a fertile one.
The best way my brain makes sense of this is by looking at it like weeding a garden.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, so if you have a garden completely choked with weeds, surgery is like going in and aggressively pulling out all the visible overgrowth.
Right.
Visually, you stand back and it looks fantastic, it looks ready for new seeds. But what if the soil itself is toxic?
Yeah.
Pulling the weeds hasn't done a single thing to change the chemical makeup of the dirt.
Right. And to push that garden analogy even further, the microscopic disease left behind is essentially actively salting the earth.
Oh, wow.
The invisible drivers of infertility are operating on a cellular level that a scalpel literally cannot touch.
Because it's too small.
Exactly. The research outlines several overlapping mechanisms creating this toxic soil, starting with chronic pelvic inflammation and oxidative stress. And we shouldn't just use those as generic medical buzzwords.
Right.
Oxidative stress is like biological rust.
Mm.
On a cellular level, these unstable molecules, these free radicals, are bouncing around, essentially chipping away at the outer layer of the egg, degrading its structural integrity before it even has a chance to ovulate.
So the egg is taking literal physical damage while it's still sitting in the ovary.
Yes. It disrupts how the follicles develop, and it creates a completely hostile environment for sperm and early embryos.
Oh, man.
And then you have to factor in cytokines.
Okay, cytokines.
Yeah, the disease causes the release of these inflammatory proteins. Cytokines aren't just generic bad guys, they are specific signaling proteins.
Right.
In a healthy body, they call the immune system to fix an injury, but in an endometriosis environment, they are overproduced, and frankly, they get confused.
They get confused.
Yeah, they act like active landmines in the pelvic fluid. They can attack sperm as if it were a pathogen, and they disrupt the delicate chemical signals an embryo needs to successfully latch onto the uterine wall.
Which means surgery is just washing the windows while the house is on fire.
Exactly.
You haven't turned off the alarm.
What's fascinating here is that even after what is considered a thorough or expert excision surgery, microscopic disease almost always remains.
Because you just can't see it.
You simply can't cut out what you can't see with the human eye. So these residual invisible implants stay behind. The surgical incisions heal, but those microscopic implants continue pumping out those exact same inflammatory cytokines.
And it isn't just microscopic disease coming back. The recurrent stats in the data are genuinely shocking.
They really are.
The research notes that adhesions, which is thick scar tissue, commonly reform during the healing process from the surgery itself, but actual disease recurrence, It hits roughly 20% by 2 years post-surgery.
And it climbs to 40 to 50% by 5 years.
Wait, half of all patients have the physical disease back within 5 years?
Yeah, up to half.
That is wild. Plus, you have the reality that many patients have coexisting conditions that the surgeon might not even touch. Things like adenomyosis, where the endometrial tissue grows deep into the muscular wall of the uterus itself.
Right. To truly understand why this purely mechanical approach falls so incredibly short, we have to look at the oocyte donation studies. These are clinical trials tracking what happens when you use donor eggs. And the findings completely upend the traditional surgical logic.
How so?
Well, these studies prove that poor egg quality, the damage to the oocyte itself, is a primary reason pregnancy rates stay lower in people with endometriosis.
Oh, I see.
It is not just about a compromised uterine environment or blocked tubes.
Wait, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around the science here.
Sure.
If you take an egg that is developed inside an endometriosis environment and you move it to a healthy environment, like a surrogate, it still struggles.
That is exactly what the data shows.
Wow.
The inflammatory and molecular pathways actually damage the oocyte permanently. The egg has absorbed that biological rest we talked about.
Oh, man.
Taking a scalpel to the pelvis does absolutely nothing to reset those microscopic cellular pathways inside the ovary.
Which brings up a really intense, almost agonizing irony.
Yeah.
The entire point of a patient putting themselves through the anxiety and physical trauma of an operating room is to restore their fertility. But the clinical literature dives deeply into how the surgery itself can actively compromise the very thing it is trying to save.
It's a huge paradox.
Now, I have to push back a little on the premise here, just thinking about this from a practical standpoint.
Okay.
If the surgeon's entire goal is to clear out this inflammatory, toxic soil, why wouldn't they just take it all out?
Right.
I mean, if leaving even microscopic disease behind continues to ruin egg quality, why do expert surgeons intentionally leave visible disease behind?
It is a totally logical question,
Yeah.
and the answer comes down to a really high-stakes, terrifying balancing act in the operating room.
Okay.
When endometriosis is deep and infiltrating, complete excision carries massive trade-offs. The surgeon isn't just dealing with a rogue piece of tissue.
Right.
They are navigating some of the most vital, delicate, and densely packed architecture in the human body.
We are talking about severe collateral damage.
Devastating collateral damage. Let's start with the ovaries, which
Yeah.
is the most critical factor for fertility. When a surgeon removes endometriomas, these are blood-filled cysts caused by the disease on the ovaries. They almost inevitably end up stripping away healthy ovarian tissue right along with the cyst wall.
Because it's all stuck together.
The tissue is just too intertwined. The studies show this causes a massive, immediate drop in AMH.
For our listeners who might not be deep into IVF terminology, AMH is anti-Müllerian hormone, right?
Yes.
That's the primary blood marker doctors use to measure your ovarian reserve or how many eggs you have left.
Yes. And the drop after surgery is not a rounding error. It is frequently in the 20 to 40% range.
20 to 40%.
Yeah, and is even worse if there are cysts on both ovaries or if the patient is going in for a repeat surgery.
That is heavy.
It is.
So a patient goes into surgery hoping to clear out the disease so they can finally get pregnant, and they wake up to find out the surgeon just slashed their remaining egg reserve by 40%.
Basically, yes.
You are literally shrinking their window for natural conception, or IVF, in the name of fixing them.
It is a brutal reality check.
Yeah.
And that is just the damage to the ovaries.
Oh, gosh, there's more.
The clinical data details the terrifying proximity of deep endometriosis to other major life-sustaining structures. You have the bowel, specifically the rectum, and the sigmoid colon.
Right.
Deep excision in that area might require the surgeon to physically open the bowel or even remove a segment and reconnect it.
Wow.
That carries severe risks of internal leakage, fistulas, or permanent, lifelong changes in bowel function.
Which completely alters your day-to-day quality of life.
Yes.
I mean, you might get the endometriosis out, but now you can't digest food normally.
Exactly. Then you have the ureters, the tubes carrying urine from the kidneys.
Okay.
An injury there during dissection can cause obstruction or permanent kidney damage. The disease might penetrate the muscular wall of the bladder. You have major pelvic blood vessels, where a slip of the scalpel risks catastrophic bleeding.
It's a minefield.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then, perhaps most delicately, there are the pelvic autonomic nerves.
Nerve damage is always the wild card in any operation.
Because damage to those specific nerves in the pelvis can permanently impair bladder control, bowel control, and sexual function.
Oh, man.
The rectovaginal septum, which is the tiny space between the vagina and the rectum, is a very common site for deep endometriosis, and all of those critical nerves and ureters are situated right there.
Wow.
And we aren't even touching on extrapelvic spread. Endometriosis can travel to the diaphragm, the surface of the liver, or even inside the chest cavity, which introduces thoracic surgical risks.
So put yourself in the surgeon's shoes. You get in there, the camera is on, and you see endometriosis deeply wrapped around a nerve that controls the patient's ability to empty their bladder, or it is deeply embedded in the last remaining healthy tissue of an ovary. They have to make a split-second call.
This raises an important question, and it is the exact dilemma every patient and doctor has to grapple with during consent.
Right.
How do you weigh the abstract risk of leaving inflammatory tissue behind against the very real risk of permanently destroying a patient's ovarian reserve or leaving them needing a colostomy bag?
It's an impossible choice.
Because of these severe life-altering risks, even the most skilled excision surgeons in the world sometimes have to intentionally leave disease behind.
Yeah.
And the result of that necessary medical compromise is that the residual endometriosis stays in the body, continuing to pump out those inflammatory cytokines and undermining egg quality long after the patient has recovered from the physical operation.
Okay, so we have established a pretty grim picture of the mechanical approach.
Right.
Surgery leaves the microscopic inflammatory pathways completely unaddressed. It often leaves macroscopic disease behind to protect vital organs, and it actively threatens a woman's ovarian reserve.
Yes.
So if you're a patient waking up from the surgery, the toxic soil is still there, and your egg count is lower. I mean, what do you do? How do you calm the remaining inflammation without going under the knife again?
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The research pivots to heavily studied clinical alternatives, specifically acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM.
And we really need to emphasize that we are not talking about a relaxing spa day or anecdotal wellness trends.
Right, not just feeling good.
No, we are looking at hard, peer-reviewed clinical data. The research synthesizes several massive statistical reviews that prove this works on a biological level.
Okay, but I have to play the skeptic here because turning down the body's thermostat sounds a bit vague.
Sure.
Does sticking tiny needles in the skin or taking herbs actually result in babies, or is it just making people feel less stressed out about their infertility?
It absolutely results in babies, and the biological mechanisms are measurable.
Okay.
Let's look at a 2025 meta-analysis. This tracked 13 trials involving over 1,000 women with endometriosis-related infertility.
1,000 women.
Right. The researchers found that when you combine laparoscopy with traditional Chinese medicine, it significantly lowered oxidative stress markers in the blood and raised antioxidant enzymes compared to surgery alone.
So it is actively changing the chemical makeup of that toxic soil we talked about. It's neutralizing that biological rust before it can degrade the eggs.
Yes, the protocols specifically focus on reducing stasis. In medical terms, stasis means stagnation.
Okay.
Think of a swamp versus a running river. When blood flow to the pelvic floor is stagnant, cellular waste builds up, and oxygen doesn't get where it needs to go.
Right.
Acupuncture isn't magic, it is neurology. Inserting those incredibly fine needles stimulates specific peripheral nerves.
Oh, interesting.
That sends a signal to the central nervous system, which responds by triggering vasodilation. That is literally relaxing and widening the blood vessels in the pelvic floor.
Suddenly, that swamp becomes a rushing river of oxygen-rich blood.
Exactly. It flushes out those inflammatory cytokines and delivers actual vital nutrients to the developing follicles.
Wow.
And when you look at the larger 2024 systematic review, 22 randomized trials with nearly 2,000 women.
2,000.
Yeah, the data showed that Chinese herbal medicine was associated with much lower recurrence rates of the disease and significantly higher pregnancy rates when compared to surgery or conventional medicine alone.
The stats are incredible, but the one that genuinely made my jaw drop was the 2023 multi-center cohort study. They tracked women long-term.
The long-term management numbers are undeniable.
Yeah.
After statistical matching to ensure the groups were identical in age and disease severity, the women who utilized Chinese herbal medicines achieved a pregnancy rate of 55.6%.
compared to just 36.4% for the women who did not use the herbs.
Right.
That is a massive statistical leap. I mean, we aren't talking about a 1 or 2% rounding error. That is a nearly 20% absolute increase in real-world pregnancies.
And it wasn't just conceptions. It was accompanied by a higher live birth rate, with herbal use mathematically identified as an independent protective factor for the pregnancy.
That's huge.
An earlier meta-analysis backed this up too, finding that herbal formulas yielded an odds ratio of nearly double for higher pregnancy rates, alongside lower miscarriage rates.
Wow.
The herbs are working biochemically to alter the uterine lining, making it more receptive, while the acupuncture mechanically improves the blood flow.
It is addressing the exact microscopic cellular factors that a surgeon's scalpel physically cannot reach.
That is the crucial takeaway. A scalpel cannot improve pelvic blood flow.
Right.
A scalpel cannot lower oxidative stress inside a follicle. But these modalities can, and they do it with a highly favorable safety profile, which is paramount when you have a patient desperately trying to protect whatever is left of their ovarian reserve after a surgery.
So what does this all mean for someone listening who is actually in the thick of this right now? Because knowledge without application is just frustrating trivia. How is this data actually integrated into real-world clinical patient care?
Well, the research gets very specific here.
It highlights a medical practice that takes this theory and puts it into daily action. The Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness, located in Midtown East Manhattan.
It's a fascinating model of care.
Yeah.
The clinic was founded by Mike Berkeley, who is a licensed and board-certified acupuncturist, a clinical herbalist, and a fellow of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine.
Right.
But what makes his practice notable in this space is the intense, uncompromising specialization. He was the very first acupuncturist in the United States to specialize exclusively in fertility, and the center has focused solely on reproductive wellness since 1998.
And his why for starting the clinic is deeply personal, which I think always fundamentally changes how a healthcare practitioner approaches a patient's pain.
It really does.
He and his wife faced their own severe, heartbreaking struggles with infertility.
Yeah.
The conventional, purely mechanical approaches were failing them. It was ultimately acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine that helped them conceive.
Yeah.
Their son is a healthy adult now, but going through that trauma is what drove him to dedicate his entire career to helping others in that exact same boat. Especially women who have already endured the trauma of endometriosis surgery. Their AMH has dropped, and they are still hitting a wall trying to get pregnant.
And that lived experience translates into a highly specific, integrated protocol at the clinic. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
Treatment is deeply individualized and centered entirely around cellular fertility. We are talking about acupuncture protocols neurologically designed to enhance that vasodilation, the blood flow to the ovaries and the uterus.
Right.
It involves prescribing customized herbal formulas that react to the patient's specific inflammatory presentation.
They also integrate low-level light therapy, which is specifically aimed at supporting the cellular energy and quality of the eggs themselves, right?
Yes, photobiomodulation to support mitochondrial function in the oocytes.
Wow.
And perhaps most importantly, none of this is done in a vacuum. It involves crucial active coordination with the patient's reproductive endocrinologist.
That collaboration is so important.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate goal for a patient post-surgery cannot just be symptom management or living with less pelvic pain.
Right.
If the patient's goal is a baby, the treatment paradigm has to pivot to improving the quality of the eggs that remain, supporting a thicker, healthier uterine lining, and maximizing the chances of conception, whether they are trying naturally at home or going through a grueling cycle of IVF.
It is about helping patients escape that terrible binary trap. So many people feel like their only two options in the doctor's office are subject myself to another risky surgery that might ruin my ovaries, or just sit here, wait, and hope for the best.
Right.
Neither of those options gives the patient any real active agency over their own cellular health.
You do not have to choose between those two extremes. There is a deeply researched, clinically proven middle path. A coordinated, integrative plan can protect your remaining ovarian reserve, actively calm the residual inflammation that the surgery left behind, and support your fertility on a microscopic level.
It is entirely about shifting the focus from just hacking away the bad to actively cultivating the good, healing the soil.
Exactly.
And for anyone listening who wants to take that next step, take back some agency and explore what it means to actually improve their fertility after surgery, the information gives direct contact info for the Berkeley Center.
Yes.
You can reach them directly at 212-685-0985 to schedule a consultation, or just go to their website at berkeleycenter.com to learn more about how these integrative protocols actually work.
It is a profoundly powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Moving from the mechanical structural limitations of the scalpel to the biological promise of treating the entire pelvic microenvironment.
Yeah.
Taking action to protect your ovarian reserve and calm that inflammation is a vital way for patients to reclaim agency over their own bodies and their own family planning.
It really is. We have covered so much ground today, from the illusion of the clean pelvis and the devastating trade-offs of surgery to the hard biological data behind acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine.
We covered a lot.
But there is one detail from the clinical research that is going to be living in my head rent-free, and I want to leave everyone listening with this thought to mull over. It goes all the way back to those oocyte donation studies.
The ones proving that the eggs themselves absorb and carry the inflammatory damage.
Exactly. Those studies proved that the root of this specific fertility struggle is largely about the chemical inflammatory damage to the eggs themselves, not just a physical structural issue with the uterus.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, if microscopic inflammation has that profound and measurable of an impact on a cellular level in someone with endometriosis, how much are everyday inflammatory triggers in our broader environment quietly influencing reproductive health, even in people who have never set foot in a surgical ward?
Yeah.
It really changes how you look at the invisible forces shaping our bodies.
It is a fascinating question, and one that reproductive science is only just beginning to fully unravel.
Something to think about the next time you're weeding your garden. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.